4 to 6 weeks. Would you believe it if I told you it is recommended to perform an FTP test that often? Probably not. But believe it or not, that's the current guidance. But should you actually complete this grueling test every month? After all, it is critical for setting training plans and understanding if you are improving. My initial thought is, well, that recommendation is flat out rubbish. Is there a better time frame to test your FTP and still gain the benefits of knowing your power profile? Let's dive in and find out. Simply put, FTP is the amount of power in watts which you can sustain for 1 hour. It is essentially the point where your body is producing lactate at a rate about how much your body can remove. Right above FTP, and you begin to enter a VO2 max effort, or an effort you may only be able to sustain for a few minutes. However, riding below your FTP will allow you to ride for much longer durations. Aside from bragging to our mates about our FTP, what other purposes can it serve? Well, first, it is critical for any power-based training plans. If you work with a coach or are following one of Zwift's workout plans, the sessions will be based as a percentage of your FTP. Think about a VO2 max and a Zone 2 training day and what they have in common. Other than both being done on a bike, each requires knowing the base FTP value. VO2 max days will often have intervals. For example here, the intervals are for 40 seconds at 140% of my base FTP level. And Zone 2 is the same concept. It simply prescribes you to ride at around 60%. Since these plans are designed to provide just enough stimulus to drive adaptions, an incorrect FTP may lead you to be riding at a recovery pace rather than Zone 2, and you not gaining the benefit of that training. Conversely, if you have took time away from the bike and jump back into a training session without updating your metrics, you will likely feel like rubbish as you attempt to push harder than your body is currently capable of. Second, it tells you if you have improved. If you finish a ride and see the confetti dropping with this message, you know your hard training has paid off. Not only can you brag to your mates, but it means your body has physiologically improved by raising the point where creation and removal of lactate is equal. And let's not forget, you will have a better shot of winning your next race or catting up. But if you don't test your FTP every 4 to 6 weeks, or like me haven't ever done one, does this mean all your training is useless? Well, no, because Zwift is able to estimate FTP from your history on the platform. If you have raced Zwift, you probably have an estimated FTP. That's because it calculates the estimate in a simple way. It looks at your best 20-minute power and multiplies it by 95%. This should theoretically provide a solid estimate, but one word of caution, be careful about the estimate if you have recently dropped weight. As FTP is based on watts and not watts per kilogram, Zwift will keep your estimated FTP based on your highest watts. Be sure if you have dropped weight to update this metric. Otherwise, your training plans will be based on the old you, who was a few kilos heavier. But overall, is Zwift's estimate accurate? Stay tuned as I'm going to suffer through an FTP test to find out. To determine if you should complete tests monthly, realize there are 2 primary FTP tests available. First, Zwift offers a ramp test. This is a shorter test which starts off at 100 watts. After each minute, you will increase by 20 watts and continue until you have nothing left in the tank. The last full minute effort is then multiplied by 75% to provide an estimate. This is a convenient test and what I would recommend for beginners. It is short in length and no thought is necessary. Simply follow the on-screen prompts and pedal till your tank is empty. However, the downside is it can overestimate your capabilities. Riders who are able to put out high power in short bursts may be able to go an extra interval, thus inflating their value. The second primary test is the 20-minute FTP test. This includes a warm-up, followed by ramps, and a hard 5-minute effort. This not only gets your legs warmed up, but also puts some fatigue in the legs, simulating a race situation. Finally, you ride for 20 minutes, trying to average as many watts as possible. The average is then multiplied by 95% to get your FTP estimate. The big downside of this test is that it requires you doing your own pacing. Even for the experienced Zwifter, this is difficult, as I myself admit to going out too hard. The second downside is it's an intense workout. You will likely want to prepare the days leading up to it and have somewhat fresh legs the day of the test. To test if my estimated FTP is close to actual, I decided to use the ramp method. My current FTP is showing at about 334 watts, but more realistically it's probably 324. So I need to survive a minute at 440 watts to match Zwift's estimate. But let's jump into the test. Here, I was pretty comfortable all the way until about the 380 watt mark. After this point, I knew it was only a few miserable minutes ahead. Ending the 420 watt interval, I knew I could at least match my FTP estimate as my heart rate still had room to climb. But as I dug further into the 440 watt interval, my heart rate was climbing into my VO2 max range, and I knew this would be the last full minute I could sustain. I crossed the banner and had nothing left. And Zwift calculates my FTP to be close to my current estimate. Although on a stronger day, I may have been able to hold on one more minute. I would conclude that my estimate, based only on racing, is pretty accurate. And this may provide evidence that you don't need to constantly perform FTP tests. The moment we've all been waiting for. Let's conclude if you actually need to test FTP monthly. First, I don't think completing a test every 4 to 6 weeks is necessary. The purpose is to measure if you're improving, but most of us will get a sense of that from a variety of different factors. For example, the Zwift estimate based on your races will show if you're improving. In addition, I believe most of us have a good sense based on race results. Did you stick with the lead group over the Epic KOM when a month ago you were dropped halfway? Well then, you're improving. Of course, each race is different, but I think our actual performances give a solid indication. Instead of every month, I would recommend doing it at least twice a year, or at the beginning and end of training plans. Second, if you are new to Zwift, it is worth it to at least do a ramp test. This way, you can have a good baseline and match workout plans to your fitness. I mentioned earlier the ramp test may overestimate your FTP. If you feel workouts are too easy or hard based on the FTP percentages, it is okay to tweak your number up or down. And finally, what type of FTP test you do will impact how often you should do it. My plan is to give the ramp test a try 3 times a year. But if you're interested in doing it more, I believe it is okay with this test. It's shorter and a lower intensity factor. Simply put, this won't cause you to rearrange your training plan. However, if you plan to do the 20-minute test, I would not recommend it every 4 to 6 weeks. That's because it requires you to rest before, as it will be about an hour of hard intensity, which you should do on fresher legs. It creates this weird hole in the plan, where you have to pause just to complete and stress about this test. In addition, you may get the pacing wrong and crack before the end, making the results unusable and causing more stress. Let me know if or how you plan to utilize these FTP tests over the next year, and thank you for joining.